Sharp, musty odor, like forgotten linens and damp plaster, clung to Alara Vance as she hunched over a cracked ceramic mug, its porcelain radiating a faint, persistent chill against her fingertips. The only sound in the room was the sluggish drip of the faucet in the corner, a morbid metronome counting down her remaining hours. Before her, smeared on the scarred wooden table, lay a crumpled eviction notice from Mr. Davies. His breath still faintly, carrying the acrid scent of pipe tobacco from his recent curt delivery. 28 years old, and the prospect of homelessness loomed with the suffocating certainty of the ever-present rampness in the air. Her savings stood at a precise £37.12, a sum that, even with her meticulous budgeting for instant noodles at £0.59 a pack, offered a buffer of just 62 meals, scarcely enough for 3 weeks. Flakes of pale blue paint, curling from the wall like dried parchment, mirrored the peeling veneer of her own existence. The small rented room, perpetually cool even in the late spring, offered a stark visual of deferred dreams. Tucked beneath her hand, providing a sliver of warmth, was a small leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with delicately penned sketches of complex embroidery motifs. This fragile collection was a secret world, a silent rebellion against the stark realities of her threadbare carpet and the ominous brown envelope lying upon it marked "Urgent Probate" in stark black letters. Its unopened seal held a new unknown threat, a potential further unraveling of an already precarious life, drawing her deeper into its unforeseen depths. The humiliating moment, the humiliating moment. The acrid scent of cheap coffee and aging velvet filled the vast expanse of the Landfair Antiques Fair, a stark contrast to the comfortable, ambient temperature that belied the building's drafty Victorian origins. Beyond the murmur of 1,000 polite negotiations and the high-pitched clink of porcelain against porcelain, Alara clutched her acquisition. The surprising heft of the faded, quilted bedspread, its once vibrant floral patterns now almost entirely consumed by the indifferent erosion of 97 years, offered a small comfort. She had paid exactly £78.95 for it at a dusty attic clearance sale, a sum she had hoped would multiply into something closer to £475, perhaps enough to cover 3 weeks of her precisely calculated rent. A ripple of cashmere and Clive Christian No. 1 perfume, announced Richard Stursling III before he surfaced into view beside her small, unassuming stall. The sharp creak of his meticulously polished bespoke leather shoes punctuated the casual din as he moved with an almost predatory grace. His Savile Row suit, a shade of charcoal so dark it absorbed the ambient light, seemed to vibrate with a self-assured authority. The unmistakable glint of a steel and yellow-gold Rolex Daytona, a 16,950 testament to his unassailable status, caught Alara's eye. His gaze, colder than the January morning outside, flickered dismissively over her display before settling onto the unassuming textile in her hands. A short, guttural scoff escaped his lips, a sound that seemed to carry with unsettling clarity across the varnished floorboards. £82 for that moth-eaten relic, he articulated, his voice a low, derisive rumble. You'd be fortunate if it's worth 1/10 of its original fabric scraps. It's a peasant's quilt, dear, utterly worthless. He then pivoted slightly, addressing a nearby dealer with a booming declaration of his own recent financial triumph. My dear fellow, I just secured a truly magnificent fragment of a genuine Gutenberg Bible, a spectacular leaf, for which I paid a rather modest £537,000. A crimson flush bloomed across Alara's cheeks, a warmth that radiated from her neck to her hairline, yet her hazel eyes, unwavering, held his gaze. She offered no verbal retort, her silence a quiet, unyielding challenge in the face of his calculated disdain. The journey and our arrival.
The journey and arrival, a faint, metallic tang of stale ink still clung to her fingertips, a ghostly echo of the probate letter that, 11 days after its arrival, compelled Alara to action. The rattling metal of the coastal train began its slow, deliberate chug away from the urban sprawl, each revolution a tangible reduction of the city's omnipresent exhaust fumes. Gradually, the air shifted, first carrying the damp, sweet scent of newly turned earth, then the brisk, briny breath of the Irish Sea. The mournful, drawn-out cry of a lone gull cut through the rising wind, a desolate sound amplified by the increasing chill that permeated the thin train windows. As the train juddered to a complete stop on the isolated platform of K-Half, The temperature dropped a full 8 degrees Celsius, a sharp, cloying cold that wormed its way into her very bones through her sensible wool coat. The rhythmic slap of waves against unseen rocks provided a stark counterpoint to the city's distant hum. The cottage, nestled precariously against a craggy incline a mere 147 meters from the platform, presented an even starker reality than the solicitor's terse letter had portended. Its original whitewashed walls were now severely streaked with viridian moss, revealing the rough, gray stones beneath. Every single window, 8 in total, was not just boarded but secured with rust-streaked metal plates. The small, once inviting garden was a tangled, impenetrable thicket of rose thorns and gorse, reaching upwards of 83 centimeters in height. An overwhelming odor of decay, damp wood, mildew, and generations of neglect, pressed down, palpable and thick. Yet, as the biting wind whipped strands of hair across her face, and the skeletal branches of an ancient hawthorn scratched against the derelict structure, a singular thought crystallized. This isolated shell, this forgotten corner of the world, was undeniably hers. The peculiar, raised seam of the quilt, a solitary item in the dusty, silent parlor, pulsed with an almost magnetic pull for her attention. The discovery, the faint, briny tang of the Atlantic, carried on a stiff westerly breeze, preceded the rhythmic crash of waves against the cliffs, a bare 77 meters from the cottage door. Inside, a cool, damp chill permeated Ilara's fingertips as she methodically drew a linen cloth across the quilted bedspread. Wiping away 27 years of accumulated dust, the coarse weave of the fabric, a humble domestic cotton, offered little resistance. Her fingers, accustomed to the whisper-soft silks and microscopic precision of her grandmother's embroidery hoops, kept returning to a subtle raised seam spanning approximately 11.2 centimeters on the quilt's faded reverse. It wasn't the neat, intricate repair of a skilled hand. Rather, it felt like an anomaly, a deliberate, subcutaneous lump beneath the worn surface. A sudden distant seagull's cry, sharp and desolate, cut through the otherwise profound quiet. Ilara's pulse quickened, a soft, uneven drumbeat against her ribs. With a jeweler's loop magnifying its crude execution, she carefully, almost reverently, began to unpick the hastily placed stitches with a silver thimble and a fine, dull needle, each thread a mere 0.3 millimeters thick, released with a tiny, almost inaudible pop. Beneath the outer layers of linen and a thin, uneven wadding of aged wool, an astonishing concealment was revealed, tightly rolled, its edges yellowed and brittle. A wax-sealed parchment, approximately 18.5 centimeters in length, lay nestled within the quilt's belly. The faint, sweet scent of beeswax mixed with the musty aroma of ancient paper filled the air as she painstakingly broke the crimson seal, embossed with an unfamiliar, intricate cipher. As the stiff paper unfurled with a series of tiny crinkles, a wave of cold dread, then profound awe washed over her. Her eyes, adjusting to the faded but elegant script, absorbed the opening lines. It was a letter penned by a certain Lady Isolde MacGregor, dated April 27, 1746, detailing the desperate flight of Bonnie Prince Charlie after the devastating defeat at Culloden. The prose, precise and unembellished, chronicled the clandestine network of loyalists who had aided his fraught escape, a human chain of courage and loyalty stretching across the broken Highland landscape. The letter spoke of a previous, precious family heirloom, a jewel beyond price, entrusted to the quilt's safekeeping, a symbol of their enduring, defiant hope for a restored crown, and there it was, nestled within a separate, impossibly tiny silken pouch, hand-stitched into a hidden compartment approximately 4.5 centimeters wide. Not 3 millimeters from the rolled parchment's edge lay a flawless, fiery ruby. It was not merely a gemstone. It was a silent, incandescent heart, beating with the weight of 3 centuries of whispered secrets and unyielding loyalty. Its surface, cool and smooth beneath her trembling fingertip, held a deep, mesmerizing crimson hue, approximately 1.7 carats in weight. The ordinary cotton of the quilt had guarded something extraordinary. The threat appears. A faint, brine-laced dampness clung to the air as Ilara unlatched the heavy oak door. The cool, chiseled wood of the knob pressed against her palm, a slight chill seeping into her fingertips. But the cold sensation was quickly overwhelmed by a sudden, jarring clang against the flagstone path, the sharply heeled shoe of a meticulously dressed woman. Clara Vance, I presume. The voice cut through the blustery coastal wind, metallic and utterly without inflection. The woman, whose name was Miss Albright, introduced herself as legal counsel for Sterling and Associates. Her formidable presence contrasted sharply with the rough-hewn charm of Elarad's cottage, the sleek, expensive leather of her briefcase, a stark black against the lichen-covered stone. From the muddy track leading to the lane, the distinctive growl of a powerful engine silenced as a gleaming black Range Rover came to a halt. The driver's door swung open with a muffled thud, and Richard Sterling III emerged, a triumphant, almost predatory smirk already forming on his lips. "It appears, Miss Vance," Albright continued, her words precise and measured, "that the property on which you reside, and indeed any items found within, even those you claim as attic finds, legally belong to the Sterling estate." The rustle of paper accompanied Albright's retrieval of a thick sheaf of documents from her briefcase. "Your great-aunt, it seems, was a tenant on land owned by a distant Sterling ancestor. A clause in the original lease, dating back to September 17, 1898, clearly states all salvageable assets revert to the landlord upon the tenant's demise." She tapped a finger, immaculately manicured, against a specific paragraph. "We require immediate access to conduct a full inventory, starting with that rather curious quilt you were showcasing at the county fair." Sterling, now standing beside Albright, added, his voice dripping with condescension, "No need to be greedy, Miss Vance. We might offer you a small finder's fee if you cooperate. Perhaps £75 for your worthless peasant quilt." He gestured dismissively towards the quilt Elara had just hours before, draped casually over a wooden rocking chair by the hearth, its true intricate secret still unfathomed by either of them. The implied ticking clock of legal action and immediate eviction seemed to echo in the sudden silence. As Albright turned slightly, a curious slip of paper, half hidden, momentarily slipped from a pocket within her briefcase. Elara glimpsed a partial family tree diagram, extending far more broadly than just the direct Sterling line, hinting at forgotten branches and complex, intertwining inheritances, secrets perhaps even Albright herself was still unraveling. The confrontation and reversal.
The faint, sweet scent of wood smoke, lingering from yesterday's fire, mingled with the dry, papery smell of old documents in the cottage living room as Elara faced Sterling and Albright. A cool draft whispered across her exposed skin from a poorly sealed window, a stark contrast to the small warm pressure against her chest. The ruby and its accompanying papers, concealed beneath her jumper. The soft creak of Albright's well-worn leather briefcase as she opened it was the only sound for a moment. Albright, poised with a practiced, confident air, began to read, her voice a precise, clear tone that carried the weight of legal precedent. As per Clause 7b of the Leasehold Act of 1898, concerning inherited properties lacking direct lineal descendants, Elara interrupted, her voice steady and even, cutting through the legal jargon. Miss Albright, before you continue, I believe there's a wider context to your client's claim, perhaps involving collateral branches of his family tree that haven't been considered." From a sturdy canvas tote bag beside her, she produced a meticulously reconstructed family tree. Its intricate lines and dates a testament to countless hours spent poring over local archives and parish records since Albright's unexpected arrival. This elaborate diagram, far more comprehensive than the partial family tree Albright had previously shown, now lay open across the worn oak table. Elara's research demonstrated that while the cottage land had once been Sterling property, it had been explicitly willed, along with all movable chattels, to a collateral heir of the original Sterling landlord in 1912, one Beatrice Macmillan, a distant great-aunt of Elara's own, thereby irrevocably severing ties between the property and the main Sterling lineage. She then laid out Lady Isilday's crisply preserved letter, the tarnished silver MacGregor locket, the fragile 1709 bill of sale, and finally, with a gentle movement, unveiled the radiant blood of Culloden ruby on the worn wooden table. The gem, pulsating with a deep internal fire, immediately drew Sterling's eye away from the documents. "This isn't merely an attic find, Mr. Sterling," Elara said, her voice resonant with quiet authority, "nor is it an 8-pound peasant's quilt. It is a historical artifact of immense significance, documented proof of a direct,
undeniable inheritance to my great-aunt and subsequently to me. Richard Sterling III's smug confidence, which had been as solid as the granite lintel above the fireplace, crumbled instantly. A faint clink of cutlery from the kitchen, where Mrs. Henderson was preparing tea, underscored the sudden silence in the room as his face became a mask of disbelief, then dawning horror. The polished glint in his Rolex Daytona seemed to dim, his expensive bespoke suit suddenly looking ill-fitting and slightly rumpled. Albright, ever the professional, saw the legal defeat immediately, her expression tightening imperceptibly. "Mr. Sterling," she stated, her voice devoid of its earlier confidence. "Regrettably, Miss Vance's documentation is irrefutable." Sterling sputtered, a choked, almost animalistic sound of pure fury. But it's worthless." Alara met his gaze, her dark eyes steady and unflinching. Justice and epilogue, justice and epilogue. The acrid scent of ozone from the photocopiers lingered in the mahogany-paneled corridors of Sterling and Associates, a cold front moving through the once bustling firm as news broke. Richard Sterling III, his public reputation a fractured facade, found himself the subject of no fewer than 7 concurrent investigations into his aggressive acquisition practices. Within 63 days, he was unceremoniously relieved of his esteemed position on the Royal Antiquities Board, facing $137,450 in financial penalties. Miss Albright, adept at anticipating shifts in power, quietly dissolved her professional ties with Sterling and Associates on November 21, 2023, seamlessly transitioning her formidable legal prowess to a more secure, prestigious London firm by January 8, 2024, Alara Vance. Holding the meticulously cleaned and carefully preserved blood of Culloden, felt its unexpected warmth against her fingertips. She chose not immediate sale, for its narrative now transcended mere monetary exchange. Instead, collaborating closely with senior conservator Dr. Evelyn Reid from the National Museum of Scotland, she orchestrated a groundbreaking exhibition, Threads of History. The Vance collection carefully repaired the quilt, its fabric, once deemed worthless, now painstakingly stabilized, to reveal its hidden compartment and the incredible 11.23-carat ruby, displayed alongside Lady Isolde's original, beautifully penned letter. The exhibition became a global phenomenon, drawing 3,874,219 visitors in its initial run, eager to witness this testament to hidden resilience. The 80-pound quilt, her dismissed worthless relic, transformed into the centerpiece of a multi-million-pound cultural event, its intrinsic worth now not a singular sum, but estimated at £2,500,000 if ever offered for sale. She purchased the K-Half Cottage on September 15, 2024, its ancient stones now bathed in the tranquil, natural light of her new studio. There her hands, once grasping at the edges of scarcity, now deftly taught traditional embroidery techniques, creating intricate beauty. The small, leather-bound notebook, a somber relic from her lowest point, now lay open on a sunlit oak table, its pages vibrant with meticulously completed patterns, each stitch a testament to new beginnings. Alara, once an almost invisible presence, had become undeniable. Her quiet discernment a profound reminder that true value often resides not in immediate appearances, but in the untold stories and the intricate threads connecting us through time.